Tenderhearted, the podcast for those of us who struggle with being extra sensitive in a less than sensitive world. This is your host, Amy Kelso. I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and advocate for anyone who is tenderhearted or cares about someone who is. Hello and welcome to Tenderhearted. This is your host, Amy Kelso. I want to apologize for not uploading a video last week. I was out of town for a while. Things were going on. I apologize, but we are back now. And today I want to talk about something I've been kind of dealing with in my mind for a little while now. So back in, I think it was February, I went to see a psychologist trying to get some diagnoses. I still kind of suspect that I may be somewhere on the autism spectrum, although she doesn't see that. But one of the things that we did come up with that was not on my radar and was not expecting was that she came up with a diagnosis of BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, which is not something that I was familiar with. I had to do some research to even understand what it was, and then some more research to figure out how I fit into that. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that because I suspect that being a tender heart is part of what led me to having BPD. Now, just to clarify, what I point out is just because I'm tenderhearted doesn't mean I had BPD, but I think that it may have affected me and been part of why I got it, if you will. Because one of the things I'm learning is it is a disorder. It's a learned disorder. It's something you pick up from interactions growing up. So from what I've researched, I know that it's caused by situations in your life that are basically traumatic situations where you learn negative coping skills. But from what I've read, there's some reason why some people get it and others don't. So you could have several children in the same household, for example. One might have it, the others might not, and they're not quite sure why. Well, I would like to hazard a guess that perhaps, at least for some people, like myself, it has to do with being a tender heart. Because we're extra sensitive, we pick up on things that other kids don't, and we get these messages that maybe for other kids they don't really even notice. So, for example, when I was a kid, when my dad had a hard day at work, he would come home and be grumpy. He would say something to my brother, and my brother would just kind of shrug it off. No big deal. He said something to me, and I took it to heart and thought I was a terrible person and awful, and it's all my fault, and what's wrong with me? So I internalized all of that because of my sensitive nature. So again, being a tender heart doesn't mean you're going to have bipolar disorder, but I think it might be that missing piece that they're saying, we're not quite sure what causes it in some kids and not others. Well, it makes sense that if you're more sensitive, you're more likely to be affected by the people around you. And if you're in a negative situation or an unhealthy kind of situation, you're going to learn negative, unhealthy ways of dealing with the world. So that is my suspicion on why I have it. But I've had to do a lot of research then once I found out, like, what is this? What is causing it? And of course, what you do find out, what there is, some of us already know, there is some stigma against BPD because sometimes when you are triggered, you act out and you hurt people. Now, I did learn that there are different types of borderline personality disorder. There's the typical one where they do just kind of lash out at people when they're angry. There's another type where instead of lashing out, you just lash in. So for me, I'm upset if I'm triggered, rather than being like, how dare you, which sometimes I do, but more often than not, if I'm triggered, I'll be like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? What did I do? I'm a failure. I'm no good. So the anger was turned inwards instead of outwards. And so that displays differently, but the root cause is the same. It's that fear of doing something wrong, getting in trouble. And really what they talk about is it comes down to a fear of abandonment, which when I first heard that, I thought, wait a minute, that's not me. I'm not afraid of abandonment. I know I can't trust anybody. No one will ever be there for me, so I'm not worried. I just don't trust it, which obviously is based on a fear of abandonment. As I was saying, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably because I'm afraid of being abandoned. I have built up these walls to protect myself from that abandonment. If somebody's going to abandon me, fine. It doesn't matter because I don't need them. I'm fine. I'll be okay on my own. Whether or not that's true, that is what I've kind of learned how to cope with The fact that sometimes people do leave your life, sometimes even if they're in your life. And that's the other thing. Abandonment may not be like actual leaving, it might be an emotional abandonment. So when a parent, a loved one, someone you care about shuts down emotionally, that is an abandonment. Especially when you're a tender heart, a caring person, and you're like, what's wrong? And they just close down. All of a sudden, they've left you. They're gone. They are not there, and you're feeling abandoned. Even though physically they're still there, the emotional abandonment is just as powerful and can have just as many effects. So, so that's just a little bit of what I've learned so far about borderline personality disorder. Definitely have a lot more research to do on it, and I'll try to share some of that with you. But I did kind of want to share that it took me a little while before I was ready to talk about that on this podcast because I had to do some processing on my own about it. But I'd be curious to hear from other people if anyone else has received this diagnosis, or if you think perhaps maybe you are and haven't received the diagnosis, but you're exploring it. Again, I'm not saying that every tender heart has bipolar disorder, but I can see how being a tender heart would make you more susceptible in the right situation, which I think is definitely kind of what happened for me. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. Again, any comments, concerns, thoughts, whatever, please put them in the comment section. Have a great week, and I will see you next week. Take care.